Tom Roten Morning Show, News Radio 800 WVHU, and online 800WVHU.com. You know how people look back at history and they realize that those people who dressed up as Indians, if you're younger than 25, Native Americans, but those people that dressed up as Indians in the Boston Harbor, then went aboard the King's ships and threw the King's tea into the harbor. They were known, at least now we consider them, patriots. And it was the start of something very big, a revolution, and it was known as the Boston Tea Party. Well, recently, some folks in West Virginia also dressed up in Indian costumes, and it wasn't for Halloween or trick-or-treat or anything like that. Phil Hudok, who is the Constitution Party candidate for governor in West Virginia, joins me now to tell me all about it. Phil, how you doing?
Good morning, Tom. Great to be on.
You and I have talked before about your concerns with the Real ID and the driver's license in West Virginia. What has transpired here for you recently at the DMV?
Well, last Friday, Pastor Butch Paw from Nicholas County, his brother Richard, and I, and we're from Randolph County, had a modern-day tea party at the Summersville DMV. We got driver's licenses. It's part of a long battle that actually started in 1999. We made a statement that if this state is going to allow cross-dressers to get IDs, to get driver's licenses, how is it they can possibly discriminate against Christians with a conviction that they can't enter into a criminal database and give their God-given uniqueness, which is the mapping of their face? See, they make fingerprints optional, but they map your face, so that's always been our concern. We do not want to give our uniqueness to the state to track and trace and follow everything we do. So we had to make a statement. We really needed driver's licenses because you can't do anything without proper ID. And, of course, the DMV is not the people's favorite department of government, as you well know.
Yeah.
Okay?
Exactly.
So here we are. We're in a bizarro world, the world of transgenders going to bathrooms and cross-dressers being accommodated. Here were three people who back in 8808 had fought for 8 years, had negotiated with the governor and the DMV. We had Senator Clark Barnes helping us, and we finally persuaded the governor to make an accommodation for us. And after driving for over 8 years without driver's licenses, on 8808 we got driver's licenses. That was rescinded by the Tomlin administration without any notice to us. When we went to get our driver's license renewed, they said, we discontinued it. There wasn't enough participation. When I talked to Governor Manchin, when we did get the accommodation, I said, you realize that the federal government is not going to be happy about this. To be honest with you, the people at the DMV were very accommodating to us. I mean, the local DMV in Summersville. They were apologetic. We were there for 4.5 hours because it took that long to run us through the mill. They said, this is coming down from the top, from the national level. However, the state is just being a prostitute, using this for revenue and to abide by whatever the federal government says. We have a world out of control. And so we made this statement. I wanted to get around to the general populace who see that they can't do anything against this oppressive government. But as in Boston around 250 years ago, they said, we're not going to stand for this. It's our government. We're the people.
Yeah.
They're the servants.
Right. Okay, so you had the okay from then Governor Manchin, and you had a driver's license without having to go through the things that you didn't want to do, and then Tomlin, when he got in office, rescinded all that.
Correct.
Was there, and the reason given was because there weren't enough people doing it?
That's correct. And yet, when people asked to get the non-biometric, they told them that you had to let your license expire before you could get it. So they wouldn't even let someone get one unless their license expired, and it was only done in Charleston. So we had to go to Charleston because that was the only place where they had a modified program so that the digital image could be deleted, and they just kept a paper copy in Charleston. Didn't go into Interpol, which is an international criminal database.
Mm-hmm. What and so you and Pastor Butch and his brother, you all were concerned basically because you didn't want to give the government more information than they needed.
Exactly. We have a police state. In 1999, I realized I couldn't enforce a barcoded wearing of IDs in Elkins, and after teaching 25 years, I said I couldn't penalize students for not wearing a barcoded ID. I said it was conditioning for a police state, and we know what the mark of the beast is. It's the police state on steroids. And I was fired for not enforcing barcoded IDs, and I had to fight that. And that went to the state Supreme Court, and I did win. The Rutherford Institute took my case on that. So this has been a long battle with a tyrannical government trying to micromanage, track, control the populace. We're supposed to be the private sector, and they're supposed to be the public sector. And yet the cameras are turned on us. Don't dare, watch them. Watch every move you make. People are more afraid of the government than they are of anything.
So you and Pastor Butch and his brother went to the DMV, dressed up in these Indian costumes, and now you've got your driver's license, and you're in full Indian wear, right?
That is correct. I had a full headdress on, an Indian top. They had to call Charleston to get permission to take our picture because they weren't sure what to do with us.
Yeah.
What do you do with 3 Native Americans? But the staff at the DMV, like I say, were very accommodating, very nice, very polite.
Sure.
And the people in the DMV that were there jumping through the hoops, they resonated with what we were doing. Everyone should resonate with it, unless you're a control freak.
Right, right. Okay, so this is an ongoing battle. You feel somewhat satisfied?
I'll be much more satisfied, Tom, when other people exercise at least what they can do without hurting anybody or causing any chaos. It seems like we're living in this world where chaos reigns and everyone has a feeling that is almost all bad news. And that's why Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders are doing so well, because people are realizing, it's like George Carlin said, it's a big club and you ain't in it. I think the reason we have so few people participate in elections is because they've given up on the system, this corporate system. And that's what I've uncovered, is that we have we have corporate government, not government of, by, and for the people. They're in a different club. We are to serve them, and they have all the power, and absolute power corrupts. We have to do what we can to restore our Christian heritage, and it's really a moral battle. This transgender use of bathrooms and cross-dressers getting pictures, it's crazy. At first, we were going to dress up like women and wear burqas. But I thought we have to make this symbolic, as did the people in Boston.
Mm-hmm. Very, very interesting. Phil Hudok has been fighting for things that he believes against government tyranny for a very long time. You've had a lot of battles. We talked to you before about battle over immunizations. Your daughter didn't finish school up there. She finished school, but she wasn't allowed to finish with her classmates because she refused vaccinations. Briefly go over that history for me.
Yes, my daughter's senior year, they came up with a policy, not law. And see, we're in policy world, Tom. They came up with policy that seniors had to have boosters of MMR, and I forget, there were three different vaccines,
right.
3 different things. I had already decided that vaccines, while there is a place for them, we had serious concerns. And my daughter made the decision that she couldn't do it for numerous reasons, medical, philosophical, religious. So she took a stand, and entering her senior year, then she wouldn't take the vaccinations. She was warned. She finally received a letter from the superintendent that if she went to school the next day, she would be arrested for trespassing. So we had a discussion over the weekend, and I said, you decide what you want to do. You can go to school and do that, civil disobedience, or you can not go to school and make a statement. She decided to not go to school, not disrupt the school environment. Mm-hmm. We contacted the local newspaper, and that morning she did an interview, video interview in the newspaper office, and they ran a story that day. Mm-hmm. She was homebound instructed the rest of the year until graduation. 2 days before graduation, the superintendent calls and says that she won't be able to graduate. And we'd been asking. She had her gown. She was valedictorian. 2 days before, we get a call on a Thursday. She's going to graduate on Saturday, and we got a call that she could not participate. She could sit in the audience, but she couldn't participate as a graduate. Yeah. I made 3 calls, one to the local judge, circuit judge, who had ordered her to be homebound instructed, to the newspaper, and to the State Department of Education. And fortunately, I found out later that the superintendent, Dr. Fayers, intervened and said, "What are you trying to prove? Let her graduate." I'm very proud of her. She's stuck up for her rights. And really, we got to think, as Christians, we have blessings. You don't have to do it right. You have the right to do it. So let's think differently about this. We have blessings from God and responsibilities. And those blessings and responsibilities require that we have a duty to do things like, be our brother's keeper. That's why I'm in so many battles. And I don't look for them. They just come to me.
They find you sometime. How old is your daughter now?
She's at D&E College. She's going to graduate a semester early. She's going to graduate this coming December. I'm real proud of her. She's going into psychology and wants to work with people in a Christian manner.
Did she ever get immunizations before even going to Davis and Elkin?
That's interesting because my wife and my daughter went to an orientation. They were sitting next to this man. I can't remember his position, but he was number 2 at the college. He was directly under the president. This man turned to my wife and said, "Is Olivia going to pick D&E?" Because I think it was some kind of a scholarship thing that they were having. And my wife said, "Well, it depends." And he said, "It depends on what?" And she said, "Well, it depends on whether she's forced to take vaccinations for college." And the man said, "Well, we'll make an accommodation for that." And they did. She didn't have to get a vaccination. They said she might have to sign a waiver, but she wasn't required to sign a waiver. So I think when people stand up, that causes people in positions of power to take notice and say, do we really want to do this? If we just roll over, they're just going to push us.
And the hypocrisy of the whole thing was you were a school teacher in Randolph County, the same county as your daughter at the same time, and you were able to go into these schools, but you didn't have the vaccinations.
That is correct. My wife and I both taught at the same school where my daughter and 3 other daughters graduated. Here it was interesting. While she was at home, my wife and I would go to the school where she was supposed to be. And you're right. We didn't have vaccinations, and all those people that would come to graduation don't have vaccinations, and all the visitors that come into our school. Yeah. And let me tell you, when I first started teaching, we hardly ever saw anyone in the school that wasn't on the staff. Now, you've got this inspector, that inspector, and they don't have vaccinations, so it's a big joke.
Yeah, it's total hypocrisy. It's symbolism over substance. It's just about control. I know that. All right, Phil, hold on here. I want to take a break and come back, and we'll talk a little bit about your candidacy for governor, running as the Constitution Party nominee in West Virginia. Phil Hudok has gotten his driver's license, and he looks, he looks like an Indian because he has a full headdress, everything on. All right, 7:21, back in a moment on the Tom Roten Morning Show. He's also the Constitution Party candidate for governor. And, Phil, you've been involved, as we said earlier, in several different protests, if you will. What is your relationship with the now imprisoned Thomas David Deegan of Wood County, Mineral Wells?
Yes, 3 men, Thomas one, Gene Stonecker from Beckley, and myself, took a case to the West Virginia Supreme Court of Appeals. And we proved without a doubt that we have suspended government since 1933 in the War Powers Act and the Great Depression. We have corporate government, which is not government of, by, and for the people. And we have the right to petition for redress of grievances, which is exactly what we did. And when we didn't get any response from the legislature and then the governor and the state attorney general, we filed a complaint in the West Virginia Supreme Court with 16 writs of mandamus. Unfortunately, when you go against the power structure and they're illegitimate, and we knew we could be in some serious danger, and that did pan out because Thomas, who was much easier to vilify than Gene or I. I'm 66 and Gene's 76, and Gene's a grandfather. And unfortunately, Thomas was guilty of a thought crime in this new police state. He didn't harm anyone. As a matter of fact, his rude awakening came back around 2000, I think about 2008, when he was using marijuana for medicinal purposes, growing it. He had been in a bad car wreck, and he was just trying to restore his health. Mm-hmm. Because of being guilty of a crime against the state by taking one of God's plants, which could be used to help him, they easily vilified him for making a statement on a private conference call and saying he threatened the government. He didn't relay a threat to anyone. Mm-hmm. He was talking about a possible scenario. And the sad part is this, Tom. Everybody that's listening has said things that the government could say is a threat of terrorism.
Okay,
everybody.
What exactly did Thomas Deegan say? This was he was on a conference call. How many people were on this conference call? This was back in September last year, right?
Yes, I would say several hundred. It's hard to tell. I was not the board operator.
Several hundred people. Okay. Mm-hmm. What did he say? You don't have to quote it, but basically, what did he say?
Well, and this was a series of about 20 or 25 different conference calls. And of course, when you pick something small out of, a progression of learning that was given here, then you can take things out of context. But basically, he was saying that the government is illegitimate and that the people would have to, it's their duty. The Declaration of Independence said it is our right and our duty to throw off tyranny. Mm-hmm. And so he was saying, you go to the Capitol with sufficient numbers of people and you say, vacate. Mm-hmm. And if the police pulled up and were a threat to you, that you have the right to defend yourself. Mm-hmm. And you do have the right to defend yourself.
Mm-hmm. That's all he said?
Yes.
And so he's now in jail. The story I found on it was from March, and it said that he was facing 1 to 3 years, but he was sentenced in April to 8 years. How did it end up being 8 years?
Because at the time that this happened, he was on home confinement for the marijuana problem, and they said he violated home confinement, so they tacked on another 5 years, another 1 to 5.
Good night.
Do terrorists take courses? I'm sorry. Do they take the course of taking a case to the state Supreme Court? Is that what terrorists do?
No. The thing is, maybe he said something that he shouldn't have said to some people who were listening. I mean, obviously somebody, I guess, turned him in. Actually,
I posted all these calls.
Oh, so they were out there. You just took the call. I mean, you didn't think there was anything wrong with it, and you posted it, and somebody saw. Okay, if he had killed somebody, if Thomas Deegan had killed somebody, would he have gotten 8 years for that?
The bond was $300,000 cash. Yeah. $300,000 cash only. And he's in solitary confinement, and he won't sign papers. And so he's actually a political prisoner who is being persecuted for standing up for his convictions. That's why he's in prison, because he stood up. And now in Huntsville, he is being curtailed. He can't even see the chaplain because he won't sign papers, basically putting himself into the corporate sphere and giving up his God-given uniqueness. Just like I did with the driver's license. It's the same battle. It's the same battle. They want you to surrender to their club so they have control over you. Not a real man, but a fiction. See, corporations are fictions, and that's what our government is now. Corporations, fictions.
Is Thomas Deegan getting, is he going to appeal? Does he even have an attorney? Because I noticed he represented himself.
No, he can't have an attorney, Tom. That would breathe life into the beast, which was beaten in the state Supreme Court. And there is no proper court now in the state because they're all in default and dishonor. So he can't. Otherwise, he would say, well, I go against, what I said before, and I'm now giving you power. He said you don't have the power because you're illegitimate and usurping. There is no place to appeal.
Wow.
This is the people's problem. This is our problem. That's why I won't quit. That's why I put this on local television. This is why I have my websites, hudok.info, hudok.com. That's why I'm running for governor. Understand one thing, Tom. It's constitutional governor, not the kind of governor we have right now, the corporate governor.
Right.
I'm running for constitutional governor, and I would instruct the state attorney general, Morrissey, to do the right thing.
Constitution Party candidate for Governor Phil Hudok. What's that website again where folks can learn more?
Hudok.info, that's about this rule of law battle. And Hudok.com, that's more about my running for governor.
All right.